Will you marry me? Isn't that a line that many women dream of hearing? Indeed, I've fantasized about it myself, and it always warms my heart when I hear it in dramas. But I never expected to hear it under these circumstances. We're at a high-end restaurant, a place known by all the locals. Surely, it's a perfect spot for a proposal. But the man proposing is Roy. In front of Roy sits not me, but a younger woman. Michelle has lost all her charm since we got married. Even so, his selfish behavior is inexcusable. I can still date younger women, you know. I'm a good-looking man. Did I really raise such a deluded man? I'm filled with regret and introspection. Doesn't he feel ashamed of his own words? I never knew Roy was this foolish. His past foolish statements come back to haunt me. It's my money, so I can spend it however I want, or I'll do as I please. Roy had become completely dependent on my earnings. I'm disappointed in my lack of judgment. The struggles of our life together and my hidden irritation. It seems like it's time to let it all out. And I'm not the only one who's suffered. I want to laugh off the chaos Roy has caused and watch him fall. I'm Michelle, a 39-year-old office worker in a regional city. It's not a big city, but it has everything necessary for raising a family, attracting many families from other areas. I have an 11-year-old son, Ken. Ken is a source of pride, excelling in both academics and sports. Talking to him feels like chatting with a friend, and it's very stimulating. I met my husband, Roy, in town. He approached me, which was unusual for him. When he first spoke to me, he seemed serious, wearing silver-rimmed glasses and a suit. Stumbling over his words, he said, "I've never done this kind of thing, but I'm serious." I sensed something trustworthy in him. Our relationship with Roy progressed smoothly, leading to marriage. I still remember his proposal. "Will you marry me?" It was a support for me even when times were tough. Roy was successful at work, having been promoted to a managerial position last year. His salary had increased, and he was happy about it. Then suddenly, Roy started complaining of ill health and began missing work. At first, I thought it was just a cold, but it turned out to be more serious. He wasn't physically ill, but mentally strained, leading to a long-term leave. I was confused, having never dealt with anything like this. My parents both worked, and I had never seen them take a day off. But nowadays, it's common for people to take time off for mental health. I read everything I could find, trying to make life easier for Roy. Initially, Roy rested at home, but he soon started going out daily, supposedly for medical appointments. I was worried but respected his decision to go out. Our first problem was money. Obviously, his salary stopped during his absence. Thankfully, we received some financial support from his insurance, but Roy didn't contribute to the household, claiming the expenses were for his treatment. I had to manage the household on my salary alone. With rent, groceries, and utilities, the list of expenses was endless. If I hadn't been saving since the beginning of our marriage, we would have been in trouble. Though sick, Roy showed no remorse. Instead, he started complaining about the meals. "Hey, there used to be salad with stew. Why not today? Fresh veggies are expensive. We have more bread instead, so bear with it. I can't eat this. I'm going out." "No, we'll run out of money." "It's my money. I can spend it however I want." After arguing, Roy stormed out of the house. Ken quietly eats the stew without any side dishes, without complaining. "Mom, your stew is delicious just by itself. Should I also start saving on snacks or something?" But I didn't want to make my child suffer because of money issues. "Ken, you don't have to worry about that. Eat as much as you like." I felt saved by my son's kindness. When Ken finally went to sleep, Roy returned home. From the way he entered our bedroom, it seemed like he had been drinking. "Is it okay for you to drink alcohol while you're under treatment?" "Stop nagging. Worrying about small things like that is the worst thing for me. I'm gonna do what I like." "Have you been skipping the medication the doctor prescribed recently?" "It depends on how I'm feeling. Sometimes it's better not to take them." "You shouldn't interfere." Roy wouldn't share the details of his treatment and seemed irritable every day. But there were days when he seemed elated, especially after returning from his outings. Those times, he usually smelled of alcohol, and sometimes there was a faint scent of shampoo. Maybe he's going to the gym for health reasons? I wished he would rest more at home and return to work soon. The difficulties of Roy's health situation were becoming more apparent. Eventually, we reached a point where our finances couldn't keep up. I switched to a cheaper phone plan and reviewed our life insurance, but there was nothing left to cut back on. Reluctantly, I had to cut Ken's private tutor. Ken had been aiming for high grades since he was young. It was Roy's wish, and Ken never complained, enjoying his studies. But now, we couldn't afford the expensive fees. I cautiously brought this up with Ken. "Ken, I need to talk to you. Can we consider quitting classes with your tutor?" "Does that mean I'm also giving up on the exams?" "No, I'll try to save more money, and hopefully, your dad will get better. But right now, we're really struggling." "Okay, I'll start studying on my own. If I can get all the textbooks up to the exam, I'll be fine." I negotiated with his tutor and conveyed Ken's decision. Ken was well regarded. Despite their attempts to keep him, we couldn't afford it. We managed to get all the textbooks from the tutor. Roy was opposed to this decision. "Won't that jeopardize his chances at a good school? I want Ken to become a successful businessman like me, even if it means stretching our budget. You should find a way to keep him there with your earnings." I was appalled by Roy's selfish attitude. Did he not feel embarrassed calling himself a successful businessman? True, Roy had done well at work, which his promotion showed. But the situation is different now. No matter how hard I tried, our finances were stretched thin, and the discussion went nowhere. "Ken says he's going to work hard on his own. Shouldn't we be grateful for that?" "I doubt it. He's got lazy habits like you. If he's not supervised, I can't trust him." "What kind of way is that to talk about your own son? He's your son too. If I'd married someone more competent, I wouldn't be in this mess." I felt a growing distrust towards Roy. Ken, despite everything, didn't complain and worked hard every day. He even started helping around the house more, trying to contribute in any way he could. Meanwhile, Roy wouldn't lift a finger to help, even neglecting his own personal care. He left all 3 meals to me and sometimes would suddenly say he didn't need dinner and go out. Roy seemed overwhelmed with his own issues, oblivious to everything else. Frustrated, I decided to take a part-time job. I already worked full-time during the week, so I started helping at a bakery on weekend mornings. It was hard to get up early on the weekends, but making bread helped me forget everything else for a while. The customers' compliments, like "it looks delicious" or "it was really good," were encouraging. It was a small, family-run shop, and being able to take home leftover bread was a bonus that helped our finances. Ken was supportive of this job. He often visited the shop, looking around and buying small bread with his allowance. He frequently brought friends to spend time there. We were becoming tougher in the face of our financial difficulties. As for Roy, he mostly stayed in his room on weekends, doing who knows what. He never had a word of appreciation for my bakery job. One Sunday morning, I was curious when he left the house early. "Isn't there no hospital visit today? Where are you going?" "Don't pry. I have some shopping to do." "Can't a sick man go shopping?" "It's not that, but..." Lately, Roy had been speaking to me in a dismissive way. Still, I didn't want to stress him out, so I kept my patience. That evening, when Roy came home, he was clutching a brand-name shopping bag. He tried to hide it with other items, but it was from my favorite brand, popular among people in their 20s and 30s. I recalled that today was the release of a limited edition item at the department store. I wondered why Roy would have such an expensive item but didn't want to upset him by asking. With my doubts unspoken, I went to bed feeling uneasy. The next day, good news arrived at our home. I had won a supermarket sweepstakes. Recently, I have been regularly entering contests and promotions as part of my savings efforts. The prize was a meal voucher for a high-end restaurant. However, my availability was limited. I casually asked Roy about his schedule, but he said he had an overnight medical test. So, Ken and I decided to enjoy a nice lunch at the restaurant without telling Roy. The restaurant was a famous local establishment, known by everyone and often visited by people from other regions. Located opposite a historic church, it was also a popular wedding venue. Ken and I had long admired it. Excited about the meal, our home was filled with a secret buzz. On the day of the meal, dressed up, we entered a world different from our daily life. The calm interior offered views of a beautiful garden and the solemn church. Contrary to my expectation of private rooms, the daytime setup was open and welcoming to tourists, with partitions removed. Ken and I were seated at the back. After ordering, Ken looked around and suddenly seemed uneasy. "What's wrong?" he whispered. "Hey, isn't that Dad sitting over there?" "No way. Your dad's in the hospital for tests." Glancing back, I saw it was indeed Roy. Unmistakable from his back and posture. He even had the brand name shopping bag from the other day. And in front of Roy sat a beautiful young woman. Their table looked like they had just finished their meal. "Maria, I chose this place today because I have something to say. Will you marry me?" It hit me then. Roy was having an affair. The books I had read for reference mentioned that most people on leave due to illness struggle to even move. Of course, there are exceptions, but Roy had been going out almost daily and spending money. Maybe he was faking his illness. The fact that he hadn't contributed a penny from the insurance money to the household and the recent brand name bag were undeniable evidence. I discreetly used my phone under the table to contact all our relatives. "It's a celebration today. Hurry over," I messaged. I also mentioned meeting at the restaurant across from the church. Some of the relatives questioned, "What's the celebration for?" but they agreed to come right away, assuming it was something joyous, even without knowing the full situation. True to the reputation of the famous restaurant, the effect was tremendous. The allure of the famous restaurant brought them rushing over in about 10 minutes. I had the restaurant's permission to wait for a bit before ordering. The relatives gathered around me. "So, what are we celebrating today?" "Look over there." I had informed my mother-in-law about the situation via message en route. She quickly understood. Approaching Roy from behind, she spoke to the woman. "Hello. Who are you?" "I'm Roy's mother." "What were you two discussing?" The woman's face brightened. "I'm Maria." "You invited your mother too?" "Roy just proposed to me." "I see. How long have you two been together?" "About a year. I work in a clothing store, and he's always been there for me, even adjusting his time off to be with me." I was shocked by Maria's words. A year ago coincided with when Roy stopped going to work. Could it be that he took time off work just for this? A reluctant thought crossed my mind. "Is that true, what you just said?" When my mother-in-law turned to face Roy, he was shaking and had gone pale. Behind her, he could see me and all our relatives. "What are you all doing here? Answer the question." My mother-in-law slammed her hand on the table in front of Roy, like a detective interrogating a suspect. She was a former teacher who hated dishonesty. I had never seen her look so formidable. "Why are you behaving like this? Aren't you going to celebrate with us?" "This man, he's married with an 11-year-old child. He's in no position to be proposing." "What? Is that true, Roy?" Roy, as if resigning himself, admitted, "It's true." Immediately, Maria slammed the table. "Unbelievable. You flirted with me while you're married." "No, Maria, let's talk about this." "What's there to talk about?" I was appalled. Roy had even flirted with Maria. He had used his seemingly respectable appearance as a cover to do as he pleased. But Roy was not an especially charming man. At best, he was a middle-aged man whose only merit was being thin. I got tired of Michelle. Ever since we got married, she lost all her charm. All she talks about is household stuff. I was exhausted by such a matronly wife. Even so, Roy had always been a dreamer. I thought it was my duty to keep him grounded.
If you're going to say that, what about you as a husband since we got married? You always wear the same clothes, don't care about your hairstyle, and have never helped around the house.
I'm the breadwinner. That's a man's charm. You just exposed yourself. Then what charm do you have now when you're not working? I was disappointed in Roy's reasoning. After all, he was in no position to criticize anyone. Moreover, I had always been mindful of my appearance, often receiving compliments, and was diligent in household chores. I didn't want to slack off just because we were both working. I was sick of Michelle. Then I met Maria at a shopping center. She looked like an angel. I couldn't believe what he was saying. No matter the reason, infidelity is inexcusable. Especially when married with a child. Maria agreed to go out with me. I can still date young women. I'm handsome.
Don't be delusional. I was with you only for future financial support for my new store.
Roy seemed shocked by her words. He had never doubted Maria's love for him.
Who else would date an old man like you? I'm still young. Give me back this past year. You're lying. No lie. I plan to divorce you after getting a new store by marrying you.
Roy looked shocked, as if betrayed by his beliefs.
Let me say something.
I stood up and approached Roy.
This man stopped working a year ago. He claimed to be unwell, and I tried to be understanding, but he went too far. He neglected our family, putting himself first. Ken had to endure a lot because of him. I can't consider this man my husband anymore. Honestly, I suspect his illness this past year was all an act.
My mother-in-law glared at Roy and pressed him.
Aren't you ashamed, being accused like this? Don't you want to say it's an exaggeration to call it malingering?
No, it's okay.
It was indeed a sham.
Roy then stuck out his tongue.
The doctor and my company were so gullible. Just saying I felt a bit sick, they treated me like I was fragile. Thanks to them, I got money and could do whatever I wanted. I couldn't give up such an easy life. Do you realize how many sacrifices were made because of that? It's none of my concern.
In Roy's words, my mother-in-law seemed to reach her limit.
Don't joke around. Michelle came to me for advice several times. What do you think of her feelings?
I'll live a life that's suitable for me. It's a new beginning with Maria. Now, if you understand, please don't interrupt my proposal. That's when Maria spoke up.
I'm not breaking up with him until I get compensation for tarnishing my reputation.
Sure.
I'll also demand child support and the living expenses you squandered this past year.
Roy found himself between Maria in front of him and me behind, with no allies to turn to. He started receiving jeers from the relatives. A waiter approached our table and gently suggested, "Excuse me, it seems to be about time for you to leave." They wanted us outside to avoid disturbing the restaurant's atmosphere. We all moved to the church outside the restaurant.
Roy, what's the truth? Tell us from your own mouth. It's true that I've been seeing Maria for the past year. So, the illness was all fake, right?
Yes.
Pretending to be sick meant I could take time off work and see Maria easily. I used the insurance money for gifts, and I did some part-time work for the extra cash.
This entire year was a result of Roy's selfish actions. It felt foolish to have supported such a man, adjusting my and Ken's lives for him.
It was all because of you. You liar. You traitor.
From the relatives came comments like, "How could you neglect such a good wife?" and "I'm cutting ties with you. Let's get a divorce."
Wait, now that Maria is gone, you're all I have left, Michelle. So, I'm just your second choice. What if Maria changes her mind and wants to marry you? Then, I'd go with Maria. It's natural for a man to switch to a better woman.
I was disgusted. Roy still didn't understand his situation. One of the relatives muttered, "He's a real idiot."
Hold on, I'm not changing my mind. I'm done with this lowlife. I get it. That was just a hypothetical scenario. But now it's clear how much of a scumbag Roy is. Without Michelle, who will cook and do laundry for me?
Can you believe this guy? Then my mother-in-law stepped forward.
I didn't raise you to be such a son.
Her loud voice echoed in the shrine.
All I've heard is self-centered excuses. Are you even human?
I feel the same way. How do we fix this scum? It's impossible.
But committing insurance fraud is a serious crime. I won't help him even if he comes crying to me.
My mother-in-law was resolute.
Come on, Michelle, help me.
No. I'm cutting ties with you.
Make sure you don't miss any payments I mentioned earlier, no matter how broke you are.
That day ended with everyone condemning Roy. I didn't let Roy into the house. I discarded consumables, sent all his belongings to his parents' house, and completely avoided him. I refused all his mail and parcels, as he was no longer family. Roy's room, which I entered for the first time in a while, was a mess. I found numerous receipts, revealing he'd spent a lot on Maria. It also turned out that his supposed hospital stays were actually trips with Maria. I boxed up the travel photos and souvenirs as evidence of his affair. It seemed Roy planned to quit his job, take my earnings, and remarry Maria. Unbeknownst to us, there were other witnesses at the restaurant. Executives from Roy's company. They had recognized Roy and debated approaching him but decided to ignore him, thinking it was private. However, they overheard our conversation and were shocked. Roy's infidelity and fraudulent sick leave enraged the executives. Roy underwent a thorough investigation. It revealed that 90% of his doctor's visits were lies. Mostly to meet Maria. Effectively, Roy, a manager, was skipping work to see a woman. He even lied to doctors for a false diagnosis. This scandal reached the news, and Roy was fired, making re-employment difficult. Not only the company, but the insurance agency also began investigating. They confirmed the fraud. As my mother-in-law said, Roy faced criminal charges for fraud. He was thoroughly interrogated and lost his freedom. I informed the relatives about the restaurant incident. Their dissatisfaction exploded, having previously given Roy the benefit of the doubt due to his illness. Some had even lent him money for treatment. Everyone had been genuinely concerned about Roy and sincerely hoped for his recovery. Roy had betrayed the trust of everyone who cared for him. We all agreed not to help him anymore, no matter what. Roy, who had lived in this area since birth, found his reputation ruined, unable to even walk outside. His selfish actions had led to the worst outcome. Scorned by family, company, and society. I had no sympathy for him. He reaped what he sowed. Whether his reputation was ruined or he was worn out by interrogation, all I cared about was collecting alimony and other dues. I resolved never to show mercy. Now, Ken and I started a new life. Ken, always close to me, could talk about anything. My in-laws, aware of the ordeal, offered their support. Ken is now studying hard again for exams using his tutor. After witnessing this whole ordeal, he's now aspiring to become a lawyer. I'm looking forward to my capable son's future. With new goals in sight, the bond between us, mother and son, has strengthened, and we're moving forward together.